So we're now well into the twilight of Elden Ring's massive cultural success. Coming off the back of Night Rain's DLC and with the impending release of the Duskbloods, we're left to wonder what's next for the Soulsborne franchise. What does FromSoft's executive foot model inspector Miyazaki have cooking up in that wee brain of his? Elden Ring 2? Sekiro Shadows Die Thrice? Gasp. Dare I say, Bloodborne Remaster? No. Not a fucking chance. So I want to come and talk to you about what we realistically could see from the Soulsborne franchise in the near future. And I want to talk in particular about Dark Souls today, and discuss some of the leaks swirling around the internet. So for those of you who've tuned into my channel before, this style of content is something a little different from what I normally do. Despite how it may seem looking in, not every thought that crosses my mind is heaped in layers of irony, shitty jokes, and the faint musk of inadequacy. Don't worry though, the not so regularly scheduled brain rot will continue. Today though, I want to have a bit more of an honest discussion here about the future of the franchise by sharing my thoughts and predictions. I'd love to hear where you guys would like to see the series go too, so of course feel free to leave your own opinions down in the comments. So anyway, back to FromSoft. And before we get to what most of you probably clicked on the video for, I want to briefly mention the mystery game that Miyazaki teased that's supposedly releasing later this year. I'm sure most of you already know what's up with this by now, so I'm not going to waste your time. The project's codename suggests it's more than likely a Dark Souls game, and by all logic it's more than likely a remaster of Dark Souls 3, which is by no means a bad thing, and by no means 100% confirmed to be true, even if it is the most likely scenario. But that leaves the question of, what comes next for the series? Is it realistically possible that we'll see a brand new entry in the Souls franchise? Short answer, yes. Long answer, it's complicated. So Dark Souls 4 is one of the most hotly debated topics in the community. Some people want it, some people don't, but the general consensus is that it's about as likely to happen as Mikola having a good idea. Now, a commonly parroted statement is that Miyazaki has completely blocked the idea of a new entry into the series from ever being created. But that's not entirely true. In his actual quotes, he basically expresses that while Dark Souls is over for him personally, he doesn't intend to stop another aspiring game director from taking on the challenge of making another entry into the series. Now, Miyazaki is known for being something of a prankster. Examples like the pendant from Dark Souls 1 and the big secret players missed in Shadow of the Erdtree. Like at this point, I genuinely believe this dude feeds off the Souls community's collective despair when they realise he was bullshitting them the whole time. But I want to entertain the idea that he's not bullshitting. What if he actually does let someone dig the proverbial horse out of its grave and take the reins? And what would a theoretical Dark Souls 4 even look like? Well, I want to immediately shoot down the idea of a direct sequel to Dark Souls 3. I think 3's The End of Fire ending is one of, if not the single best ending in all of gaming. And yes, that's a hill I'm willing to fucking die on. Of course, all the other options still lead to mostly the same outcome in the end, which is the fire eventually fading. But this one is my personal favourite flavour of that. It wraps up the series in a not so neat and very ambiguous bow. It leaves a lot to the imagination, and that keeps with the theme of the series as a whole. The world of Dark Souls has come full circle over the course of thousands of years, and I think the ambiguity of 3's endings are not only fitting from a player choice perspective, but I think they're what makes Dark Souls Dark Souls. The mystery, the melancholy, and the feeling of sheer fucking hopelessness that engulfs you no matter what path you take is something that's baked into the series' DNA, and the ending showcases it best of all. Honestly, a direct sequel would probably do more to ruin the story of the first and third game than anything else. And I think Miyazaki knows this more than anyone. It's why he chose to close the curtain on the series personally and move on to other things. The story that he wanted to tell is all but told.
Ashen One, hearest thou my voice still?
So if not a direct sequel, then what? Well, I'd like to turn your attention to Dark Souls 2. Now you might be wondering how looking at FromSoft's failed abortion could possibly bring anything worthwhile to the table, and you'd be right if we were talking from a gameplay standpoint. But that's just the thing. Most of what plagues DS2's reputation isn't to do with the fact that it's completely separated from the main story of the other two games. They reference each other, sure, and 2 somewhat bridges the eons-wide gap between 1 and 3, but the story and lore are generally not what's being criticised here. It still manages to tell a compelling story in the world of Dark Souls while not derailing the main through line of the fire linking curse. Of course, Dark Souls 2 came out well before 3 and helped shape some of the world building, but the fact is that you could essentially remove it from the trilogy and almost nothing important would change. And so if a true Dark Souls 4 were to be released, I reckon it would follow in 2's footsteps and take place sometime in between the first and third games and be supplemental to the Dark Souls universe as a whole. Where and when would it take place? I've got no fucking clue. But it's a very plausible thing that we could see down the line. There's something in between 1,000 years and the amount of time it takes your lazy ass to get out of bed in the morning between the first and third games. So we've got plenty of space to work with. That being said, I'm still not convinced that this is the most likely scenario. I want to propose something that a lot of people watching might consider downright blasphemous, because what I'm proposing is Dark Souls 1 reimagined. Now hold it with those torches and pitchforks, people, because that's not all I've got to say. What I think is the best move forward in regards to the Souls series isn't just a simple faithful remake of Dark Souls 1, but a full-on reimagining. A reimagining of the first Dark Souls would, as Miyazaki said, give a younger, aspiring game director a chance to prove their worth, by handing them a game that already has such a solid base and allowing them to tweak the, less than stellar bits. Imagine, if you would, Dark Souls 1 with a lost Izalith that doesn't want to make you rip out your own fingernails while exploring it. Sheer fucking bliss. Of course, there's plenty more that could be switched up from the original. A combat system that feels more fluid and modern without straying too far from the slow-paced and tactical movement that defines the series, and some major rebalancing for spells and weapons that don't get a chance to shine in the original. I'm well aware that you can beat the entire Souls series blindfolded with your arms tied behind your back while being pegged by a 6'7" ex-prison inmate, but that doesn't make using certain underpowered weapons in these games feel any less underwhelming for the average player. We also have the Bed of Chaos, a real shit show of a boss, and something that Miyazaki himself stated as one of his greatest regrets when looking back at Dark Souls 1. This boss fight could be easily reworked to have the player fighting some kind of demonic avatar of chaos, with the bed itself being more of a set piece that occasionally attacks or causes environmental damage, sorta like the Pilgrim Butterflies in the Dragon Slayer armor fight.
Yo, you fucking daft cunt!
But I'm not here today to explain my dream Dark Souls 1 remake, so I'll leave the proposed changes there. Fromsoftware has come a long way since 2011, and I think a remake could allow them to flex their muscles and give us the Dark Souls we always wanted, if even just to let us see Anor Londo in all its fantastic 4K Ultra HD glory. I'll be honest, I don't think we're going to see anything new from Dark Souls for a very long time. I reckon once what is probably the Dark Souls 3 remaster drops later this year, they're probably just going to sit on the series for a while. And that's fine, these games are by no means in dire need of remakes. But one day, like an OnlyFans model on their 30th birthday, they're doomed to fall into irrelevancy. But I think this series is far too influential to just let it die completely. And if it does return, as I said, I think it'll be in the form of remakes rather than new entries. Either way, the Dark Souls games are something truly special. And beyond a shadow of a doubt, they'll continue to influence the gaming world for years to come, regardless of if FromSoft decide to breathe new life into them or not. For now, we can only wait and see what they've got in store for us, and we can sure as shit count on it being peak regardless of what it is. But I'll always have that idea of a perfect Dark Souls in the back of my mind. And speaking of, what do you guys think? Do you reckon we'll see a brand new Souls entry, remakes, or will FromSoft just remaster 3 and then toss the corpse of the series off a cliff? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I want to thank you all for clicking on this video. If you enjoyed, why not leave a wee thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel and want to check out some less serious shit, I'll leave a link to my most popular video in the top right and in the description. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time.